Bonjour à tous, bonjour à toutes. Je suis ravie.
Good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to be here today to talk about AI and productivity in companies. With me around the table, I have right over there Corinne de Bilbao, French president of Microsoft, Niccolò Ubertelli, president of the CCF Group, Fabrice Desnaux, member of the board of Alliance Trade, in charge of credit intelligence, reassurance and safety, Mathilde Cazeneuve, director of Ganser France, and Danielle Chiarella, who is director of McKinsey & Company France. So thank you for being here, and I will leave the floor immediately for Patrick Artus, a member of the Circle of the Economists, for a short introduction. Thank you, Charlie, and good morning, everybody. I'm going to introduce this very important topic of AI and what we do with productivity gains related to AI. When a company adopts AI, there are three possibilities. Either AI is merely a substitute for a job. AI will replace human beings, and there will be more AI and fewer jobs in this company. Or AI enriches the work content. This is the optimist thesis, that of Philippe Ayon, for example. AI makes work more efficient, but doesn't destroy jobs, but enriches the content of the job. Or in certain sectors, AI has very little effect on the jobs. We can think of sectors where human beings are essential. So in any case, there will be gains in productivity related to AI, whether AI replaces jobs or whether it enriches the content of jobs. You attain very significant gains in productivity. And there are some theoretical assessments that go to very high levels of productivity gains thanks to AI. So we can stick with this theoretical analysis, but above all, we can see in practice what is happening in the economy. I was looking at AI is a very recent phenomenon. We can date the massive arrival of AI within companies at the beginning of last year, the beginning of 25. When you look at what happened in the States, we've seen gains in productivity and job destructions in many sectors of the American economy. We've seen jobs decline in trade, logistics, transport, finance, services to company, consultancy. And if you look at the American economy today, it only creates jobs in the sectors of business where AI has a very little effect on the production technology. And jobs are created only in health, education, and social services. If you look at France, there's a very important piece of work done by INSEE last spring, which looks at the effects of the introduction of AI in France. And we can see that AI has very few effects for the time being on the French economy, but has a very concentrated effects on the sector of IT services. And AI has led to the massive destruction of jobs in IT services, only for young people, for juniors. There's been a drop by 8% of jobs last year in IT departments in France for juniors, whereas the more than 40s have kept their jobs. So this brings us to another problem related to the introduction and development of AI, which is that AI makes it more difficult to enter the active world and the job market for juniors. So what is crucial when companies introduce AI? Well, there are gains in productivity that are inevitable. There will be gains in productivity, and it means that the added value per employee will increase, be it through the destruction of jobs or enrichment of tasks. But the central question is, what will we do with these gains of productivity? So there are three main possibilities. First of all, these productivity gains can be used by the public authorities to train employees to use AI. And this would be a very virtuous use of productivity gains related to AI. We would train all employees to use AI knowing that different work show that between 40 and 60% of tasks will be very strongly affected by the introduction of AI in the future. A second virtuous use of AI productivity gains is that it will bring prices down. So the company brings its prices down so that its customers draw the benefits of the productivity gains related to AI. And so there would be a virtuous circle, a drop in prices in companies that use AI, a gain in purchasing power for consumers, additional demand, and at the end of the day, there is no loss of jobs because you have to recreate jobs thanks to the gain in purchasing power that has been redistributed among the population. And the third use of productivity gains of AI, which is a very unfavorable use, which would be to enrich a small number of companies or individuals. Unfortunately, this is what we can see happening in the States. There is an AI enriches certain people and increases the heritage of a few people. And so if productivity gains related to AI are used to send billionaires to the moon or to allow them to buy paradise islands in the ocean, it would be a very poor use of AI. So yes, AI will lead to gains in productivity. AI in the short term will no longer destroy jobs. And then the long-term effect of AI on the job will depend on what we do that is favorable or unfavorable with the productivity gains associated with the development of AI. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Patrick. So let's get into the heart of the matter. Companies are talking increasingly about AI. They're announcing lots of new products, and they're collaborating with startups. They will recruit a lot of specialists. But today, do companies really attract value from AI, or are we still in an experimental phase? I'm going to turn to Daniele because you have a 360-degree view of things. Yes, good morning, everybody. Well, actually, as Patrick said, AI is quite new, and it started to really take root at the beginning of last year. And of course, we're still in a transition phase, and we must separate the rate of adoption of AI with the value that we are able to extract from AI. With regard to adoption, for companies, we can say that more than 90% of companies use AI in one form or another. Everybody, implements it with Pilot as a tool, etc. But actually, if we look at value creation, the portrait is very different. We calculate that only 10% of companies have already scaled up AI in their organization. And if we look at the companies that are able to create added value and a bit thanks to AI, that represents only 5% of companies that have already achieved this. So it's a new version of the solo paradox in the sense that we're talking about AI. AI is omnipresent, but it's not in productivity, and it's not yet impacting the results of a company. So there will be a technological revolution, but not a productivity revolution. And this is what we see in a certain number of studies that we're presenting in X. And it's the difference between who would gain from this and who cannot access this type of advantage. And so we need to avoid using AI just as an optimization of current processes, because if we want AI to have an impact, there needs to be a strategic jump. We need to entirely disrupt our organization and the process from end to end. And so we must recognize that AI can have a very strong impact because the increase in productivity in Europe and in the States is highly concentrated. in a limited number of companies. In our studies, we can see that more than half of the growth of productivity in recent years has come from a small number of big companies, between 30 and 50 companies. So in France, 53 large companies are responsible for more than half of the productivity growth. That means that it's not a question of having all the companies that scale up the use of AI, but it's very important that what will happen in the large companies, because this can really bring a productivity boost and a competitivity boost for France. What's also interesting to note is that the companies that have already achieved a positive result on their bottom line are companies that have revolutionized the way they do business and their organizations. And as a conclusion, this is the real topic. How can we guarantee that we will reinvent the business model and the organization of processes rather than just implementing AI to optimize different processes left, right, and center? At Corinne, this is also what you can see in Microsoft France. And what sectors have a head start compared to others? Good morning, everybody. Thank you for this warm invitation. I think that we are moving from the individual use to the useful adoption and the transformation of organizations. I agree with what you were saying. Adoption doesn't mean transformation. In terms of the adoption of technology, France is quite well positioned. We work on the global labor market, and we see that more than 45% of employees today in companies use artificial intelligence. And so that represents about 30% of the state. So quite a significant dissemination. But there is a paradox, because today people in companies say, yes, it allows me to do more interesting tasks, things that I didn't do before, and to create value. But it also says that most of them, and the organization of their company is not ready and has not organized the strategy. So it means that if we want to go from individual productivity, where we save time, we save a few minutes, and you say that this no doubt has impacts on the number of employees, to how we engage in processes, logistics, customer interaction, all of the company's processes to create value. What we see in France are that 3/4 of companies still are working on individual productivity. I give people the tools, and we hope they will work faster, more efficiently, but they haven't really transformed the organization of the department, of the job itself, and we see this in many industries. However, I don't know, you were saying 10%, but for us, 20% are doing this. We have some great industrial examples in each area of business. You see a company such as Publicis in the media is really reinventing the way in which they create content. So you might think, yes, it's going to destroy a lot of things, but actually they go and find new clients, and they're very competitive on the global market. So that's a good example of a company that says, I'm not just merely giving a tool to my employees, but I'm going to transform everything that I create in the content from my companies and the way that I take this to market. There are two industrial companies which really stand out. That's the distribution of electrical equipment that has reorganized its logistics chains, and which has allowed it to become more competitive on the global market. So what these companies have in common are often that the manager has decided that it was a company strategy. It wasn't just tech for tech, because otherwise we just throw out a tool and it's not very worthwhile, because we haven't really explained how it helped the company's strategy. And we have also lost the employees along the way. And so I want to do this with, I either want to reduce the cycle of taking my products to market. I want to go faster, or I want a better customer experience. I want to win more clients. So those that succeed are the CEOs that have defined what they want to do, who have massively trained the employees. It's the same study which says that there are 7 employees out of 10 among the executives that are not trained, so they take their own tools to the company, and the employees have the tools at home, so they take them with them, and it's shadow AI. And those that have invested massively in this, and then there are those that have defined not 100 experiences and proof of concepts, but who have said there are 1 or 2 subjects that are very important to the company that we're going to invest in. So it could be better managing my inventories, and which are tightly related with the company's strategy. The companies that have made that choice, with the CEO that's really engaged and with a massive training, so I won't do everything, but I want to do 2 strategic things to the company. Those are the companies that really succeed and that make them more competitive. Well, Nicola, are you one of these companies? Is the banking sector really, has a banking sector really integrated AI today? Maybe you can talk to us more precisely how you've, in the CCF, how you've integrated this. Hello, everybody. Yes, absolutely. In the banking sector, in the services sector, it is a revolution just like the Industrial Revolution was. There are no 2 ways about it. It is the speed with which we implement it, which is the only difference. As Patrick said, there are 2 ways of doing this. The simplest thing is we slash cuts. To the contrary, we need to have a better vision of the future, and here we can really use it to grow. We must consider that banks, the biggest 100 banks in the world in the States, have a cost about 800 million. 2 to 3 million of this could be gained in efficiency by AI. It's just a question of time. And what does this affect? First of all, it affects sort of the security side of things. It really changes the world. I don't know if you've heard about Mythos. Mythos, it's a small AI software that had become so dangerous that they had to shut it down. And this will continue. It will come back. But it's not a big problem. It just means that all banks will, upgrade to defend themselves. So everybody will find a new balance. But it's a big change. All of the automated tasks in the CCF, we've automated 67% of the tasks of back office tasks. And this is just the beginning. Why can a bank such as ours do it? It's a social question. There are individuals behind this. There are families. We can't just do this for profits, but we need to be very careful about how we do it. And the economic system around it can reabsorb these people. But technology is there, and it gives us speed that we didn't have before. But the final part regarding growth, and this is really what interests me the most, I think, and I really believe still, that banks are a question of trust and knowledge of the person that you're working with. And we are convinced, at least in the CCF, that the purely digital model will not work for everybody, because I will never trust in a machine. You receive these emails, happy birthday, from an automatic machine. It gives you the same emotion as does it give you the same emotion as when your sons say that to you? No, that's the difference. Yes, the machine will say happy birthday, but you know very well that it's all false. And so for me, what is fundamental is growth and how we do it. With speed, meaning that AI can bring a lot more speed. How many of you have taken out a bank loan to buy property that took 4 months and millions of documents? Today, after automating this, it should take about 15 minutes. It's nothing at all. But this can really boost the consulting effect or the relevance. How many times have you been called up for something that you just don't need? They call you, well, no, I don't need this. And once again, AI can help on the relevance of what we do. And thirdly, all of this requires training of individuals. Person to person, not digital training. Once again, the trust, the credibility of the person, the trust is gained through a person-to-personal relationship. And I'm naive, but I believe that that will not change. And we can see this quite clearly today. So Fabrice, how does this improve productivity for you in Alliance Trade? Yes, well, for Alliance Trade, for those of you who are not familiar with our company, we are the leaders of credit insurance. And through this business, we are led to engage in credits for millions of companies across the world. We guarantee about 1.3 trillion in credit, and we obtain the information. We monitor the quality of about 80 million companies across the world. We're a sector where data and information are critical. And so we have been practicing AI for practically 7 to 8 years already. And to begin with, it interferes in terms of automation and decision processes, scoring processes. So we have managed to very clearly increase the automation of these processes. But it's not just productivity, because these processes are more accurate. So we do more, we do better, and this has allowed us also to support growth. And basically speaking, it's 50-50. We've gained in productivity by 20 or 30%, but we're able to do 50% more volume for the same cost of risk that we had 5 or 6 years ago. So there is this duality between productivity and growth, and I think that we've managed to put this in motion. The other element is the increase in our credit analysis and our analysts, because just like for the banking sector, we need to have an address book. We're not just going to let a machine take the decision about credit. So there is always a human beings are very important to manage exceptions, the more complex cases, and also to explain the decisions to our customers. So the customer relationship is very important here. So we have increased the capacity in our analysis. We provide them with tools that allow them to be faster and more efficient. So there's a gain in productivity, but human beings remain key in our processes. And where we've seen that we have the greatest gains is when we're able to entirely review our processes. So concretely, a decision-making process to cover credit was very sequential in the past. We had a request, we went to find the information, we used this information, the information was put before a committee, and we gave a decision. With the AI and the automation of our processes, it's far more fluid, where there's a permanently keep an eye on the information, and we collect warning signals or positive and negative signals, and we're able to make decisions or to tweak our position in real time. And this is thanks to this reorganization of processes. I want to be honest, it's not entirely complete, so there's still a lot of potential there, but thanks to this reorganization of processes, this allows us to make sustainable gains. And what's true for us is true for quite a few companies that are following in our wake. And so to be quick, I will say there are gains, they are real. We are able to measure them, they're gains in productivity, but it's not just productivity, it also allows us to do more. And therefore, the net for us, we have not reduced the number of jobs very much, because we have managed to do more with the same number of people. And so the main challenge is really to reinvent the place of human beings in this process that we define, and to support them in the transformation of their job. And this is a work site which is currently underway. Well, very good transition to talk about human beings, Mathilde.
Today, do we need the AI expert in COMEX? Do you need a CEO who is high-tech? So how do you come with these issues with your clients? Hello, Charles. Hi. I don't know if everybody knows Ganzender. Ganzender, we help leaders, managers on the recruitment, development, and governance. I will explain my views on the topic. So somehow the underlying question for us is, how can leadership appropriate AI to create value? This is the key issue. Means that we have to go through men and women. So when it comes to experts, when we recruit AI experts, when people come and say, could you help us recruit AI experts today? And it is changing. There are two major categories of AI experts. I'm simplifying. Those who imagine AI, scientists, coming from the academic world, from research, and the founders of startups as well. And then there are those who will accelerate AI and transform companies and businesses. And there you got people who will manage the infrastructures in companies to manage data, that's essential. And then you got people in the businesses who will work on use cases. Now, how can you operationalize AI so that it transforms the way you work and it creates values? And when you describe this, when we describe each profile is interesting, precious, but we don't necessarily need to have an AI expert within a COMEX today. In some businesses, in fact, they have a different approach. They get the question out, they ask themselves, but shouldn't AI be at the level of the board of directors? So to make sure that in the board of directors, AI is around the table, so that we would ask ourselves the good questions, and the topic is there. So we should ask ourselves about good questions, the correct questions, and we should challenge ourselves. So within the board of directors, there could be people who are, of course, AI experts and who are members of the board. I mean, that's the commercial thing. But you can also have committees, ad hoc committees, special AI specialized, and companies are being structured like this. And of course, then you got external counsel. Now, for your second question, now, do CEO be can they code? No, of course no. The answer is no. Thank you. But and this is where it becomes interesting, because today we see a change, a deep transformation because of AI, of the skills required for a CEO, skills that did exist, but some are clearly, truly strong today and necessary. Let me give you a couple of examples. Of course, there is intellectual curiosity. I mean, that's essential. I mean, second, the ability to learn. Not easy, and what comes with it, that is the ability to de-learn, because the recipe what led us to what we've done today, what we've achieved today, might no longer apply tomorrow. So it means that you have to be agile and modest. Then it's good sense with another notion, and I imagine, which is the questions, the ability to question oneself, to challenge oneself. Then, Corinne talked about that, the ability to give a meaning to the company, to mobilize the entire company. AI transformation is not just a topic of experts in a given department. Everybody has to be onboarded. Which means as well that there are decisions to be made, difficult ones, and they called for a boldness and courage. And that's part of the skills of the CEO. And last point, and this is new because we didn't discuss that much, is creativity. It seems paradoxical, we talk about AI, technology, very analytical things, but in fact, creativity is essential to give a humanist dimension in the conceptualization of things, the reflection of models, and to make one step aside and to look at things in a very different way. And this is where it will create value. So somehow for us, it is in a way more the more the company will rely on artificial intelligence, the more the deep human qualities of leadership will become strategic. Okay, great. We talked about human and change of process. Daniele, now even though we all have the ingredients, well, we need to integrate all this. There is a transformation plan, or it doesn't work. Yeah, and this could be actually the most important point, actually. That is, and it is something which is not yet clear, actually, for everybody. This AI is not a technological project. AI is not an IT project. And I'm always astonished to see how many times in businesses the AI manager is in the IT. And we start seeing that if you to have a real impact, lasting impact, well, AI has to become a business transformation, a company transformation, industrial transformation, because we talk about industrializing AI. In this context, it means that whoever is in charge of AI becomes the CEO. And I do remember, I remember the importance of senior management. You have the responsibility, and to give the timing to run to do the transformation. It means as well, and that's interesting to see that more and more businesses are putting under the same responsibility IT and HR. And that's another topic, key point, because you cannot look at the two things. IT and human resources are the same. They communicate. And it's essential to have this global vision and ability to plan how and where they will be, the networks will be in the future. The implication for that means that there are 5 imperative components to do industrial transformation or business transformation. One is to identify priority domains. I'm talking about domains, not about use cases, because you have to find things which are in themselves which are important but independent, but they have the sufficient critical mass. Second is to elaborate an implementation plan which is holding on for the entire company. Then you have to adopt governance to give to the CEO the ability to steer, to control everything. But and as Nicolas and Corinne said, there are new risks which have to be taken into account. Cybersecurity is one of them, but in this context, you need to have this end-to-end vision of governance. Fourth, we need to transform the end-to-end process. End-to-end transformation of processes. It's not just small changes. If you want to rewire, end-to-end, you have to redesign the entire processes, as Fabrice said about credit, for example, and to invest in skills. What I can say, the topic which for me is striking, and you mentioned it, is we are still lagging when it comes to investment into skills and competence. McKinsey, in fact, we consider that for each euro that we invest in technology, we will have to invest 2 euros on the skills and change management domain. AI is a human domain, it's not a technological issue. And this is why it is important to think when the CEO say how much does it cost, the AI. But don't look at the IT, look at how much you will have to spend to reskill or upskill your employees. And then we come to looking at AI, as Nicolas and Fabrice said earlier. AI doesn't mean to replace the staff. It's changing the mode of activity, increase the opportunity to be creative, the decision making, and mostly assess the business judgment. This is something that we have as humans. The machine doesn't do that. So how are we going to get this type of transformation which we presented to Vivatech, what we call the symbiotic business? It's not only agents, but how can we define the organization, and the humans, agents, and robots will work together, and we will. And this is what is striking. So, last point and key point, which I think is a topic which is underestimated still, is that you have to think that in the last 20 years, European businesses and French businesses, in fact, did nearshoring or offshoring to reduce the labor cost. We moved, we sent job overseas. The opportunity offered by AI is to repatriate, you reshore, the processes end to end, and we can do even more things at a lower cost in France and Europe. And the good news is that, in fact, France has the skills, the competence at the level of the mathematicians, engineers to do it. But we also know that we don't have enough. We got a gap, and this will be essential in the academics to increase the capabilities to have more engineers, mathematicians, and technicians on this topic. Corinne, is this an opportunity for the SMEs as well, or where do they stand? Where do they stand in this area? First, let me add something to what about the relationship to AI and humans. Clearly, it should enhance human skills and capabilities, and nobody, like the tech or anything, think that we just want to human capacities. But it is for us to do this, to be responsive, to have a collective responsibility, and to be able to train. And it is a competence management plan. And we often rely the analysis of every profession, the task, not profession. So it is a responsibility from the side, the companies and tech companies to implement this major plan, competence plan. Because judgment, human interaction will remain human and will not be replaced by AI. SMEs, well, it seems paradoxical, but possibly this is their opportunity. They're called companies which often don't have the means to buy legal experts or to afford your human resource. Human resources are key in AI. So all these companies which do not have the opportunity to buy expertise, will have expertise available. So why doesn't it go faster? Because 58%, you said, of company leaders thinks that they will need AI to keep growing. Yet, it's complicated. Why is it complicated? Because it is difficult to often they're not trained. So at the training, and this is why we do a lot of training, agnostic. Regardless of the products. On students, small businesses. We did the AI tour in France. Then they have difficulties identifying which profession, because they can't wait often 3 years and say, okay, well, I'll have an experience and I'll see if it works. They want to have added value now. And then third, they have a little support, usually, from major consulting companies which could help them define strategies. So we did one thing, which with the framework of the AI Week and the AI France tools, we did a conversational agent, open source, which is fully agnostic, technology agnostic, but which, regardless of your domain of activity, will say, you say, I work in the building industry, I'm in a legal company, in a legal, will give you the 3 or 4 simple uses and how to implement them easily, without going through complicated things, but to get 3 or 4 cases of use and how you do it. So these are useful things. We can feel that SMEs want to go there. It's a major subject of accompanying of support, and even in large corporations, in France, like in Germany, it's difficult to onboard the ecosystem, and large companies, have to do that with all their subcontractors. There is an appetite, and when we give them the tools, usually the decision-making get much faster. So if you give them concrete tools, but there are others, they can quickly, rapidly make decisions and create value, because they need to have, they have to be competitive on the market. Fabrice, productivity gains. We've been talking for about half an hour now. I mean, when will they be massive? Tomorrow, the day after tomorrow? Will it be slower in Europe than in the US? Tell us. I'm very careful when it comes to a productivity massive shock and layoff waves. It seems like it's going to take place tomorrow. Reality is more subtle, and there are indeed globally a lot of jobs that will be AI impacted. About 1 out of 4 will be impacted. It doesn't mean that the jobs will disappear Some will be enhanced or restructured, and it is about a third, a third, a third. One third can be automated, a third can be enhanced, and a third redeployed or recomposed. But in the studies we do. So there are gains, but gains call for the review of processes, and this takes time. It takes time, so it takes time. It's not going to take place overnight, so I think it will be long. And you have to realize that AI, short term, this is what we see. AI generates a lot of activity. There is a lot of investment growth in AI. So concretely speaking, now AI is actually generating activities and jobs and even inflation. So it takes place in Asia, in Korea, in China, Taiwan, US, maybe more than in Europe, but right now there is a lot of investment that generating growth. When we look at medium long term, 10 years, let's say, in the US, we consider that the effect on employment is so far neutral. A lot of plus on tech and less in other domains. In Europe, it's clearer in countries like France, Spain, Germany. It's roughly minus 2.5, minus 3% of jobs, which is a lot, but it's not a disaster, especially when we look at the demographics. So there is a shock of competitiveness, but it will take a while. And of course, this is a macro vision. And at the individual level, well, in the meantime, in the next 10 years, there will be a lot of changes, retransformation, change of content of labor. So even if at the macro level, I don't believe in the mass unemployment impact, but at the individual level, for individuals, there could be a lot of transformation. And for businesses, for example, clearly, there is this difference between companies that will be able to make the AI turn and to generate growth and those which cannot. And we talked about small businesses early on. Unfortunately, there is a huge gap between the adoption and the ability of small businesses to make the AI turn and largest companies. So we measured that in a series of studies and which show that clearly that larger companies expect more politic gain, and so it is a true topic for the economic where we are now. So are you actually firing or laying off or recruiting? Both, actually. As I was saying, there are jobs which are repetitive, non-creative, which honestly are not really enriching for people. The truth is simple, yes, the machine does it better, faster, and it's not going to be a mass of unemployment because we have a company where, thank God, we protect people, so of course, but the truth is there, we'll go into that direction. Then what does it mean that 80% of repetitive jobs have been automated? 20% are complex tasks, complex where only human can act and should be a human's been trained. So it is more interesting for the person who was doing the same job, who will have 80% of jobs which are boring. So they will deal only with complex jobs. Now, my work is not to cut costs, so I want to create growth, and this 20% could hire all the people who should, to raise the level, to have true specialists, and this is the back office and as client of a bank, this part you don't see. Whereas in the advising, in consulting, we hired more than 10%. I created such productivity. We used to do 2 calls per client per day, per individual, per advisor per day. We've moved to 4. And calls are much better targeted. Other people, the person say, oh yes, I need that, yes. So AI is something that you have to be careful. AI is like if you give me a Formula One to drive, where I will drive my Peugeot. I'm not sure I will be faster with the Formula One because I don't know how to ride it, to drive it. And more we have clients who come and say, but this is my investment plan, I've done over, on that AI. We look at him and, that's ridiculous because the person who tried to tell the AI what he needed didn't have the skills to do it. So we have to be very careful that the advice of a machine is not always the best advice. So what I'm trying to do is to retrain people, give them people who can, when you come to an advisor, and then adds value, and AI will help the advisor who will know how to use it well. This is the true change that we experience. Last point. Every month we see how many clients we lose to one bank and how many we win from another bank. The largest number of clients who come, they come from digital banks because people, the lawyer, doctor, it took time for him to save, to economize 100,000 euros. He has an open platform. Well, they all, they have all the, okay, that's it, okay. So, there is a jargon, and so they have to choose that alone, or there is an AI done by someone somewhere who will advise that person to do this or that. So what we said is people, people, they know you well, the agents, you have children, you want to put money on the side for your nephews to go to university. They know that, and they help you. They know the risk you want to take. So this human part, the machine will not be able to replace it. Maybe am I naive, but this is what we're pushing in our company, and this is where we see the difference. Part of the French say, okay, well, digital could be efficient, but I want to talk with John or Peter because I know him and I trust him. Mathilde, one last question before we get a couple of minutes for the room. Now, how do you integrate the new individuals in AI? Who they have to report to? Does it go to the technical director, business? Daniele started to answer the question, and I fully agree with him. Historically speaking, AI was under the TIO, CTOs, and it was normal because of technological issue and data structuration. Today, the discussion shifts. We are not dealing with just technology, we're dealing with business and business models and strategy. So from then on, companies have made their organizational model evolve. What we see in the more mature companies which have thought about the subject is a hybrid model. There is a spine with in central, with people who will deal with data and structure the data, and we'll have these standard governance topics. We have to speak the same language, and then closer to the business, the professions, there will be people who will deploy initiatives to transform the model, create value, reinvent ways to work. What's fundamental there is that they work together. It is a business, it is a company's topic, not an expert topic. So, and some companies went even one step further, and it is like what you say, they create groups, working groups, task force, you call them the way you want. They group technology, the business, the HR. This transformation, the way we decide, it's a transformation, it has an impact on the culture. They invite in the groups, and you didn't mention that, the legal department. There is a risk management notion, regulatory management, and reflection, ethical reflection of responsibility. So, and of course, there is the governance issues. So somehow, the AI is not purely technology; it is leadership and governance. Thank you, Mathilde. Yeah, give her a round of applause. Patrick, would you like to do a brief conclusion? 30, 40 seconds. Two messages. One, we're just at the preliminary stage of AI revolution, because today, when we've improved the existing processes, and tomorrow we're going to change processes. Second reflection, AI deployment will give a large superiority to countries which have flex security, like Nordics versus southern countries, because AI will impose a lot of training and lots of rotation on the labor market. People will change business, employment, and in Nordic countries, we always take the example of Denmark. I mean, we do reforms which are highly adapted to this issue. In Denmark, there is an amazing turnover on the labor market. 30% of employees change employer every year, and it's not because they lose their jobs. It's that they resign to be trained by the training system and then get a better job. And in France, in fact, we privilege protection of jobs. So employees want to stay in their company with a training system which is which is failing. So countries of the South will have to adapt the management model of the Nordics to benefit from AI. Thank you, Patrick. We got 4 minutes for questions, so please be brief. If you want an answer, that will be brief as well. So I have to be the women with the whip. Hello. Hi. I'm here. Okay, let me stand up. Asokba, CEO of Asokba ST Group. I do have a question to Nicolo from the CCF banking structure. Do you have, if you have several patents in relationship with AI, are you able to monetize them and based on ISO and ISO 688? No, no. To be clear, no. We are not to do it. You need billions. We're not able to do that. We only use AI off the shelf, available on the market, basically, which are off the shelf. You all know them, the Claude, Anthropic, ChatGPT, and so on. Then there are protected versions for data to be protected or safe. But anyway, it would be naive to think that I could design my own AI system. This would necessitate 100 billions to do it. So I can't do it, can't afford it. Hello. Thank you for your presentations. Question, very concrete question when it comes to the global topic around AI. We talked about the adoption of the onboarding and the human and cultural aspect. In a previous panel, a speaker said, this notion was an essential anyway. So, my question, today, with AI, how can we make sure that the cultural and human factor is fully integrated into the systems developed in the companies? So, I can give you an answer. It's a very, very high topic. The bias, gender bias, origin bias, everything, all forms of biases. So we did invest a lot in what we call ethical AI, right from the design of software up to the development and the implementation. All projects go through ethics committees. We give the companies the tools to assess, in fact, the bias, and regardless of what they are, and make sure that there would be ethical governance. We talked about governance, but we did not talk about ethics enough. And unlike what you may think, AI has less bias than human beings. So that's also a fact. Once you set the rules of management, you provide the tools, companies can add their own rules for governance or responsibility. But it's a key topic, and we invite companies to organize their ethics committees whenever an AI project starts. As far as we're concerned, all the software development teams have ethics and bias review teams, because otherwise we're going to create exactly what we did create as human beings, all forms of bias, which are not just gender, but, all sorts. But it is a capital topic. Otherwise, well, the technology will be rejected. 30 seconds. I think it's clearly a change management topic. You need visibility, be clear about what you want to do, and don't come with AI just as your job is going to be cleared. Very few people love doing a repetitive, non-creative job which could be replaced by an automated system. You have to give them visibility, help them, push for reskilling, and if you do that, well, there will be an onboarding. People are very enthusiastic about it. To adopt all the tools. Give them a form of visibility and something which explain to them that we're not replacing your job. We're replacing the part of your job you don't like. Thank you. I'm being waved, a wave that I have to stop. Thank you.
Tous les 5 d'être venus témoigner. Merci beaucoup, Patrick, pour l'animation.